In today's video, we're going to be talking about how to stop your manager from overloading you with work. Or you might not be able to stop them, but at least you'll have some control or influence about how much work is coming your way and try and manage your workload better. But certainly, if you pick up this tip that I'm going to give you today, you will definitely have some success in controlling your workload. We work in a very busy industry. Like the building management system industry is a very busy industry. Actually, like all of building services, mechanical, electrical, fire, hydraulics, security, vertical transport, lighting control systems, building owners, facility managers, consultants, we are all very busy. We are not in that industry. There are other industries where people probably sit on a Friday at 3 o'clock just playing with their phone, like, wishing for the day to end. That doesn't happen. Everyone is very busy, and a lot of people are actually overloaded with work. And I can sort of tell when this is happening, because when I'm working on BMS projects as a consultant and I'm reviewing design technical submissions, I can kind of work out if this engineer is a bit overloaded, because I can just tell by the quality of the submission, there's mistakes in there. Or if I'm doing BMS witnessing and I'm going through and they haven't configured the trends properly, or the alarms, the time schedules, or the graph, there's mistakes. I can work that out. So I still do now, even though I'm off the tools, I don't work for BMS companies anymore, I can still tell, and I've been around it for a long time, so I can tell when people are overloaded just by like the quality of work. So if you're overloaded with work, there's kind of like three things you can do. One thing you can do, the first thing, which is kind of common, is do nothing. Just bear it. Just put your head down and just grind through it until you burn out and resign. Like a lot of people resign from work because they're just overwhelmed with all the work they're doing. It's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to get a new job with a clean inbox, with no inbox, and a brand new job. I don't want to have like 3 or 4 jobs all overlapping each other and not enough help, and that sort of stuff. So first thing is just ignore the problem. Just grit your teeth and get it done until you resign because of that. That's one thing. The other thing you can do is, which people would do, is go and complain to your manager. So walk into their office and say, like, get a bit emotional. A little cry might help. And you just complain about, I'm so busy, I'm stressed out, and have a bit of a moan about it. And they probably won't do anything from that. I don't think that managers, they get moaned at a lot. I don't think they'll do anything, right? So the third thing you can do is what I'm suggesting in this video. And I'm going to sort of circle back to times when I've done one-to-one coaching. So I've done one-to-one coaching with like business, like BMS owners of business, but I've also done some coaching with BMS engineers. And often like these might be young engineers. So it's one-to-one coaching, for an hour a week, every week. I meet up with them and I'm like, what are you doing this week? What's coming up next week? Oh, you're doing witnessing? Okay, like what's your plan for witnessing? You need to do this, this, and this in preparation. The consultant will be impressed by that. So I've done a bit of that sort of coaching. And one of the things, when I can see they're kind of flustered with workload, I'll ask the engineer, how many hours are in the sales estimate have been allowed for this work you're doing? So if you're an engineer doing software programming or a design engineer, how many hours are allowed for you to do this job? And I'm telling you now, most of the time, young engineers don't know the answer to that. They get given a job and they just work through it. They just work through it. They don't have a plan around how many hours there are. So the first thing is I'd ask them is, and I'm asking you also, I guess, do you know how many hours are allowed to do this component of design or this engineering or this commissioning, whatever, how many hours they're on? You'd be surprised that young engineers don't know that. The second thing I'd say to them is, have you looked at the project program and do you know exactly when you have to get your work done throughout the next 12 months, through the plant rooms, the floor works, whatever it is? Like, do you know where the milestones are when you have to deliver your work? And they often don't know that. They might say, well, the project manager has the project program. I don't know what it is. And then I'd say to them, okay, go away, come back next week with how many hours are allocated to the job for your work and a project program. Those are the two things. And then they'll come back next and they would work together on that. So what you should be doing is this. You should look at this job. Say you've got 5 jobs. Get a spreadsheet. I was actually going to do a spreadsheet for you, a little dummy one, but it's kind of late on a Friday and I'm I'm kind of tired and a bit worn out right now, so I'm just going to talk you through. It's kind of easy, but yeah, I did have intentions of actually showing you something really much more impressive, but like, yeah, I'm just a bit tired. So in your spreadsheet, in column A, you list your projects. So you've got 5 projects, projects 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they're listed, and you have the calendar months, from January to December. And what you do is you get the project program and you work out when you've got to hit these deliverables, and you work out how many hours are allocated to you, and you put those hours in that spreadsheet. The first time you do this, it's going to be kind of rough because it's not that easy to do this actually. So the first time you do this, you might just say, okay, hang on a second, this job, I'm going to do 1 day a week on this job. And this job, I'm going to do 2 days a week. So in this spreadsheet, in January for project 1, you put in there 20 hours or 30 hours or 40 hours, whatever it is, for the month. You do that, right? And then you totalize all those months at the bottom. So at the bottom, you can see the total number of hours that's been allowed for by the salesperson on these 5 projects required through January to December. You can see that. So there's 2 things you can do with that. One is you can go to your manager, show them the spreadsheet and say, listen, manager, at the moment, I'm kind of okay with workload, but as you can see, in 6 months' time, there's going to be 3 or 4 months where some of these other projects are crossing over, and according to the hours that we've allowed through the project, as per the scope of work and the specification, I need 200 hours for each of those months. 200 hours, 200 hours, 200 hours, and there's only 160 hours in a month. So you could be forecasting to show your manager, hey, I'm giving you a heads up. I'm cool now, but in 6 months, I've got a big problem and I can't deliver this work at a good quality. So can we look at, getting a freelancer to help me, or another resource at the company to help me, or an interstate person, or an offshore resource, or whatever it is. Maybe you guys might look at trying to start one project a bit earlier, push one a bit back, and try and flatten it out. Your manager can work with you to stabilize that workload. Or you go to them and say, manager, look at this. These are my 5 projects, and as you can see, I've got more than 40 hours a week. I've got 50 hours every week required to do this work, and I'm not coping. I'm missing deadlines. I'm making mistakes. It's creating rework. It's costing us money. This is the language that resonates with your manager, because you're showing them in black and white that it's not possible. You're showing them it's not an emotional thing. You aren't going in there and crying about it or freaking out about it or being creating drama about it. You're just calm. These are the facts in black and white. I can't do this amount of work. So that's the main part of this discussion. It's around where, let me just pause for a second. Another part of this also is, what flows in from this is just you better managing your workload, right? So this first part of the discussion, I just had an idea now. This first part of the discussion is how you can present to your manager information, data, hours that shows that you're either overloaded now or you will be overloaded, right? It's hard for your manager to ignore that. The second part of this, which I'm just thinking out loud as I'm going through this, is that it helps you manage your own workload. So you can see what you need to do and you can manage your own workload. What often happens is a big mistake we make in the industry is that the engineers, commissioning technicians, and software programmers, designers, they all feel that it's the project manager's responsibility to ensure the project finishes on time with good quality and within budget. And technically that is true. But to be successful in projects, every single person, every single resource on the project needs to have some financial awareness for their scope of work. So even if you're a commissioning technician, you need to have some awareness of how much time is allowed in each plant room or on each floor. And obviously, if you're a software programmer or a design engineer, you need to be aware that you have 40 hours for this plant room to get that work done. A lot of people, I don't think like that. Because engineers are kind of technical. We don't have management type skills. We're not trained in this, right? So engineers are focusing on nuts and bolts. They're not thinking always about that part of it. But imagine this, right? You have 2 engineers in the office, and one of them is just working and doing good work, but has no real awareness around how long it's taking. For all you know, that engineer is actually losing money on all their scope of works. Like that engineer A does great work, they're technically sound, but it just so happens that all their projects, they spend 20% over the budget for engineering. They don't even know that. Like they don't even know that. Whereas if you, engineer B, thinks a lot about, okay, how much money has been allowed for to do my part of my component of work, how long is it going to take, and you manage that, you work hard and you focus and you make sure that on every single job, you execute the design or the engineering or the commissioning, whatever it is, and you're doing it on time and it's within budget. That's very impressive. You've been known as an engineer that people will want you on their projects because you're not going to lose money in that design phase or that engineering phase. And that is how you get promoted. So you could have two engineers in the office. I've discussed this before where like the best engineer might not be the best. So the best engineer, wow, that person is so talented, but they're losing money all the time. They don't even know it. This engineer, less experience, but they're getting the job done and it's on time, on budget. And maybe you always do like 5% less of the budget. You make a little bit of extra profit, just like an extra 5 or 10,000 every job. That's what money people like project managers and branch managers and national managers and operations, they care about money type things. So all resources on a project, no matter what you're doing, no matter if it's a technical role, everybody, design engineers, software programmers, commissioning technicians, obviously project managers, everybody has to have a financial awareness for their scope of work, no matter how technical you are. And that's a mistake we make because we don't do that. I'm still trying to think about what I've been saying, just circling back to the beginning. When I said to you, I don't think I said this, when I'm doing coaching and I ask the engineer how many hours are allocated to your project, and they often don't know. What's also happened, I've noticed with smaller companies, with smaller integrator type companies, usually the engineer is also the designer. Now, in the large manufacturers that are doing like big projects, like $5 million projects, $10 million projects, they often have dedicated designers and dedicated software programmers. But usually, smaller integrated type companies can't justify another resource. So often, the engineer is writing the software code and doing the design. Now, this is what happens often. When I say to them, come back next week and tell me how many hours are allocated to the engineering, they'll come back and tell me like 200 hours. And then I'll say to them, how many hours are allowed for design and how many hours are allowed for engineering? They often can't tell me that. I've noticed, I'm not saying it's all companies, right? But I'm just saying often salespeople at smaller companies are not breaking out the design hours separate from the engineering hours because you don't have two resources. You have one resource that does that, so it's all lumped together. I think that's a bad thing. I think that even if it's the same person doing the job, you should have a separate cost code to book time to a timesheet for design and engineering. Because when you don't do that, the business doesn't know that on every single job, we're overspending on design because you aren't tracking the design cost separately. Maybe overall it's okay, but you really should know that the design phase is properly being priced properly and delivered to budget, and the engineering is delivered to budget. So yeah, a bit of a side note there, just thought I'd mention that because that's what happens usually when I'm doing this coaching stuff. And just to wrap things up, I'll just tell you a bit of a side story, which is related, but not exactly. Let me tell you how I learned this, right? I didn't learn how to do this because of this exact reason. What it was is when I was a project manager, there was a guy called Andrew Galt, and he was a very experienced project manager. He used to sit behind me in the office, and he was kind of my mentor for about 2 or 3 years because I didn't have a lot of experience in project management, and he did have, and he was helping me a lot. And he taught me this, and how we did this, or why we did this is kind of interesting and important, especially if you are managing a team. This is important. What was happening was we had like say 5 projects each that we were project managing, and we were like looking at our projects we had and the number of commissioning technicians that are in the department, and we were sort of kind of working out that we felt like there was a risk that in 6 months there wasn't going to be enough commissioning technicians to do all of our projects because they were all overlapping. There was something happening at the end of the year or the end of the financial year, whatever often happens. Projects kind of usually finish at the end of the year or the end of the financial year. Not always, but in my experience, they do. So in Australia, in my consulting projects, I have a big push towards June 30. end of the financial year, and there's another big push towards the Christmas breakup. Anyway, so he told me, like, let's list all of our projects on a spreadsheet and go get all the commissioning allowed hours out of our sales estimates and get our project programs. And we both put in the months whenever we needed commissioning labor. So maybe I needed like one commissioning tech for 1 day a week at the start here, as just like slowly like powering up panels. And then the workload would, maybe I needed like this person would be there for 5 days, like full time on my project. Maybe this other job was a very big project, and maybe the floors were finishing, and there's like maybe the roof plant room was finishing. There's like, multiple different work faces, and I needed 2 commissioning technicians. And we worked out that in 6 months' time, this total number of hours, there wasn't enough commissioning technicians in our company to do that. Plus, there's 2 other project managers that also need commissioning technicians. So we went to our resource manager and we said, look, here's all our projects, and it looks like in 6 months' time, as these jobs are overlapping, we're not going to have enough commissioning technicians. And that gave our resource manager 6 months notice to go work out what to do. Like, is he going to hire somebody, or could we borrow staff from other states or other departments, whatever it was. But so yeah, I learned this. Andrew Galt taught me this when we were forecasting commissioning resource requirements for all of us. And I've just sort of like re-engineer this concept into talking to you about how you as an individual person could manage your 5 projects and your engineering or design, and help take this information to your manager and show them, hey, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. I'm very busy. Can you work with me? Have a look at my workload. Here's my projects. As you can tell, I've got like 45 hours a week of work at the moment. Plus I have got these other meetings, branch type things, and other types of training type things. I'm just not coping. That is how you get things done. Moaning doesn't get things done, because everyone's moaning all the time, and resigning is not the best solution. Like, in most cases, you can solve your problem that's giving you problems. Anyway, that's the video for today. I hope you got some out of that. I think that even if you're not deeply overwhelmed with work, I think you should manage your workload better. If you're an engineer, manage your workload better, and do this for yourself anyway, just to understand your workload. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.